Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I'm Sarah Vantine here with Ted Ings. Today we have the Nexpart panel. And Ted, so many opportunities for today's automotive parts departments.
Exciting things happening in automotive, and so grateful to Matt Cashman and Adam Smith. Welcome to the Fixed Ops Roundtable, and grateful to have you both here.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Sarah.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us, guys.
All right. A lot of good things happening. Parts is getting a lot of love, and deservedly so. And Sarah, it's an exciting time.
It is, Ted. And Matt, I want to come to you first because for our audience today and those who may not be familiar, can you give us a brief history of Nexpart and the platform's roots in the automotive parts industry?
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. I think the history is really important context for understanding why, and where the platform is, as it sits today. Nextpart's origins trace back to WHI Solutions, which was founded in the early 2000s and really became one of the most, respected names in the automotive parts catalog, data, and B2B e-commerce spaces. WHI was built with deep expertise in one of the hardest problems in the industry, parts fitment data. Anyone who spent time in parts procurement knows, how generally complex parts data is. You're dealing with millions of SKUs, decades of vehicle applications, supplier data that isn't clean or consistent. And WHI, really spent years solving that problem at scale and built a supplier network and commerce infrastructure that really became foundational to how parts moved through the aftermarket. eBay Motors acquired WHI and built upon that foundation to create really, what Nexpart is today, a modern B2B procurement platform that now drives insights from over $4 billion in annual part sales across the network.
Adam, this is so exciting to hear just the history and the foundations and then where it's going next.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that's been built over time. And WHI used to stand for Wrench Head Incorporated. So I started working with the company 20 years ago. And they were known as having the catalog, having the data, working with all these manufacturers to get all that stuff in there with all the ACEs and PI standards. But we're so far beyond just the grappling of data. And sure, manufacturers still struggle with that. We know that. But Nexpart has really created something that was the habit of the buyer to begin with. And that was trying to find out, where can I get a part? And I've got all these sellers. Where am I going to buy it? And so we'll talk about this through the course of this segment, but we really were innovating something to emulate and consolidate what was happening in real practice. Matt, I don't know when that actual brainchild began, but of course it came to fruition a few years ago when we launched Multiseller.
If I may, I was just going to follow up, Adam and Matt. You've also built quite a network that's out there. You've got some big names and big sellers, and congratulations to you on that, because you're really leading the way and at an important time in our industry, I might add as well.
Yeah, no, we thank you for that comment. And as Adam really iterated, and I will reiterate, that network was built over time. It took decades of automotive experts coming together and kind of building that infrastructure. So really the strength and foundational part of Nexpart and our data infrastructure and ultimately our product really comes from that supplier network of partners that we've done business with for decades. So that's really the strength and the backbone of the business.
Yeah. I think it's important to put the perspective of, like, who are we talking about? And it's tens of thousands of suppliers. We have just about anybody you would know, like Napa, Advance, O'Reilly, AutoZone, the Parts House, Factory Motor Parts, Parts Authority, Worldpac, and more. So it really, I don't want to say it's ubiquitous. I don't want to say it pridefully, but like, we've got this. I mean, it's rare to find a distributor that's not using Nexpart to sell. And so it is known. I wouldn't say it's like super, super, super known in the dealership space, because we've been so strong in the automotive aftermarket, especially with distributors. But it's certainly known. I mean, we've got some big enterprise companies like Lithia and AutoNation using the platform. So we're definitely there. And I think today we want to break into just helping dealers know how they can improve their workflow, improve their process, save time, save money, all that kind of stuff that we're going to talk about today. And I do want to mention this: the platform also now has tires, so that whole issue of ATD and NTW and Tire Rack and Tire Hub and U.S. Auto Force and K&M Tire, TWI pumps. Those are all in the platform now as well. So we're really trying to get, what do people need? What are they sourcing? What are they buying? Let's make it easy. Let's get it in there and let's put it all in one place so people can stop fishing in multiple ponds and just have it in one place in front of them.
Matt, if I can ask you from your vantage point at Nexpart, how would you describe the state of parts procurement today for retail automotive dealerships?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, it's one of the most underestimated operational challenges in the dealership world right now. Parts procurement, really hasn't kept pace with how everything else in a dealership is modernized. Think about, just how much has changed on the customer facing side. We've got online scheduling, digital retailing, F&I tools, and then you look at how parts are actually sourced in most service departments today. You have service advisors that are still picking up the phone. They're logging into 4 or 5 different supplier portals and, waiting on callbacks just to find a single part. And, this friction, it has a real cost. Every minute a tech is waiting on a part is a minute the bay, isn't generating revenue. And in a market where, dealerships are under real margin pressure, competing with independent shops, dealing with shifting consumer expectations, that inefficiency compounds fast and it comes at a cost. Back end operational layer, specifically how parts are sourced and managed is, still stuck in an older era. And, that's the gap that we are, very focused on closing.
Mm-hmm.
Really
Yeah, I think the horsepower that Nexpart brings to the table is this issue of tens of millions of stock checks monthly, and over 10,000 just even orders an hour. Hundreds of orders a minute, and so we understand what's going on behind the scenes. And the hope is that the Nexpart multi-seller platform can speed up and optimize this. The hunt for the part hasn't changed. It's how you hunt the part. I remember working the phone and the computer. I used to manage a repair and body shop way too long ago that we're not going to talk about now. But there are levels of savvy at all these different dealerships. And I think the dealership owners that might be watching are thinking like, yeah, how savvy is my tech stack? How savvy is my my information architecture? And what are my parts procurements people doing? How do they integrate with our service advisors? Where is that? And where is software? What's working? What's not working? And we should say this, Matt, Nexpart Multiseller is absolutely free to buy. For a buyer, you can go on there for free. There's no monthly fees. There's no user fees. You can have as many users as you want. And so it can be a part of your workflow. And that's what we're noticing as optimizing, fixed operations, is how can we optimize the workflow? How can Nexpart Multiseller be a part of making business easier to do and really streamlining what that process is? And we've got a lot of examples of that. Again, if we've got big groups like AutoNation and Lithia using it, we know that there's a value add there and people are seeing it. And that's what we're talking about today.
Great stuff, Adam. And Matt, the conversation, parts managers and service directors, I'm curious to hear, what do you hear most consistently from them? And what does a better process actually look like when you're describing it from day to day?
Yeah, that's a great question. We talk to a lot of customers, a lot of parts department to incorporate that feedback in how to go to market and how we help people conduct their organizations. And the number one thing I hear is I need the right part fast and I don't want to chase it down. Sounds simple on the surface, but it's very complex once you dive into it. A typical parts manager might have 5 or 6 different supplier relationships, an OEM, a couple aftermarket distributors, a local jobber, and getting visibility across those simultaneously requires a lot of manual effort today. They're tabbing between portals, they're making calls, cross-checking availability data that isn't always accurate, and there's a real trust issue with that data. Parts managers, they've been burned by systems in the past that don't show something in stock that isn't actually there. So they hedge, they double check, they overorder, and all of that behavior is a symptom of a system that doesn't give them confidence.
Yeah.
A better process looks like this. One place to search across all your suppliers in your network simultaneously, real-time pricing and inventory you can actually trust. When you compress that sourcing window from what might take 30 to 45 minutes today down to a few minutes, you've unlocked real capacity. The bay doesn't sit idle, cars get done the same day, customer doesn't have to come back. And we call that better customer satisfaction, tighter RO cycle, and more throughput from the same team in the same number of hours. That's not a technology story. That's really an operational transformation, and that's what we're really trying to achieve, through how we go to market.
Yeah.
One other thing I also want to be clear about, for dealers, Adam brought this up prior, but using Nexpart as a buyer, the platform is completely free to access. There's no licensing fee, no procurement costs, and getting started takes less than 5 minutes. You can create an account, start buying immediately at nexpart.com, or if you're a dealer looking for resources specifically to get together for your team, you can visit nexpart.com/dealers. The barrier to getting started is essentially zero, which removes one of the biggest objectives we hear from operators who've been burned by expensive tools that didn't deliver in the past.
Yeah, I should say this too, that your relationship with those suppliers is not going to change. You already have a login, you already have an account there. Nexpart Multiseller is just consolidating all those sellers in one place. So everything that you have done in the past will remain in the way that you have that relationship with them. And if there's, the pricing and the way that you process a return or a core return or something like that, it's all the same. We're just putting all those sellers in one place. And that's going to come back to the speed game too. And we talk about price, and that's a sensitive thing. Like, I don't know about, if you win on price, you lose on price. And I think the service directors and service managers and the procurement folks, they know just because it's the cheapest doesn't mean it's the best. But in the Nexpart Multiseller platform, being able to see like, okay, where is this coming from? Like, it might be cheap, but that warehouse is 2 hours away. It's on the other side of Manhattan. Like, I'm not going to save $5 waiting for that one thing. I need that water pump. They had the timing belt, and now I'm sitting here waiting for the water pump to come across town. So and that's kind of the smarts of just, okay, let me look at my supplier network and feel this thing out. So just mentioning again the whole speed up game, which is going to lead to greater profitability.
It makes a lot of sense, everybody. Matt, let me follow up on business intelligence. Can you talk about how data plays into smarter procurement decisions? And are there any other ways dealerships can get even more value out of the platform?
Yeah, that's where I think the biggest unlock is for dealerships, and it's an area that genuinely doesn't get enough attention. Most parts and service managers are making procurement decisions based on instinct, which is valuable, but it's incomplete. What if you could layer in what is actually happening across the market and get that into the decision maker's hands in real time? Nexpart's Service Trend Advisor tool does exactly that. We give dealers business intelligence on repair part trends derived from our over $4 billion in annual sales data across the Nexpart network. So instead of guessing what's going on, guessing what's going to be in demand based on your own shop's history, you're benchmarking what's going on across the industry in real time. That's a fundamentally different kind of decision making, combined with consolidated order history, all your purchases across all your suppliers in one place. You start seeing patterns that you couldn't see before. Which suppliers have the best fill rates, where you're over ordering, where you're leaving margin on the table. Procurement shifts from reactive to strategic, and that's where the serious operational gains live. Now, there's also a dimension to this that I think surprises a lot of dealerships when they first hear it, and that's the seller side of the equation. Dealers who carry OEM parts inventory have an opportunity to also become sellers on the Nexpart network, not just buyers. That means that parts are visible to other buyers in the network, which can turn what was a static inventory line item into an active revenue stream. It requires a little bit of additional setup, but for dealers who are sitting on an OEM inventory that isn't turning fast enough internally, it's a real profit center opportunity that most dealers haven't thought about.
Yeah, we've seen that light bulb go on where it's like, hey, I'm buying. Mm-hmm. I think I can sell some of this OEM inventory, and it's a little bit of a gold mine. I mean, I like one of my vehicles is a 20-year-old Honda Ridgeline. I have put Honda parts on that thing. The thing's still running. It's got over 200,000 miles on it. I've done some of the work myself, but it's like when you want a quality part and you have a customer that's willing to pay premium,
yes,
why don't you offer that thing for sale? So, well, just meant there is that's not free. We got to get that set up. There's integration to systems and things
Okay.
there when you want to sell OEM parts, but it's absolutely happening, and you might as well show up. And Ted, maybe we can put one of our graphics in there quickly to show what it looks like when you see these suppliers in there. But why shouldn't your dealership show up
It's
as an
impressive.
OEM provider amongst those lists, right? That's kind of the epiphany. But we would say get using it as a buyer first, because you're going to understand that experience, and you'll always have to be careful when you go to selling. You got to protect the house. You got to make sure, okay, now I've got an inventory management system where I'm not giving away and selling too many of the parts that I'm going to need to fix some cars coming in. So there's a business intelligence game there. I do want to come back to what Matt was saying about that advisor. This service trend advisor is like, let's say you've got a 2015 Ford Explorer or something in there. Hopefully it's not like a 2010 or dealership. They don't want to work on something that's too old, because you got that risk of, well, I fixed this and this thing broke. But if I go in there and I say, like, okay, I'm doing this job, and I go into that advisor and it's like the O2 centers, crapped out on this thing and you can see it trending in the region. And it's like, okay, well then I probably should tell the customer, like, same thing, like the timing belt water pump example that's ubiquitous. If I'm in there, I've got this thing, I'm showing that the O2 sensor is going to have a problem. I found that out through the multi-solar platform. I can also order that thing through the platform. And I've also made a customer pretty happy, and I've mitigated some risk of that thing rolling back in the door, right?
Those are great points. And, you know, Matt, Adam, a lot of our dealer audience that's listening today, they're looking for solutions with their parts departments and their parts strategy. And this really solves a lot of different opportunities for them. And Matt, for our dealers that want to learn more or get started, you've already shared quite a bit that there's a lot of opportunities for them to get into this at no charge. But what's the best first step for them to learn more?
Yeah, that's a great question. The easiest way is just going on nexpart.com, our main landing sign up page. We have all the information you need to start creating an account and start buying parts instantly. I think the sign up process, start to finish, probably takes a whole 5 minutes. So this is something you can do with just a couple minutes extra at the shop. You can create an account, get all your suppliers hooked up, and you should be able to start procurement on our platform. 5 minutes probably start to finish. So that's a great resource there. And then we also have nexpart.com/dealers, where we have resources specifically aimed towards the dealership community. As we service all different types of buyers and sellers within the automotive supply chain industry. So we have a specific set of resources that are just tailored towards dealers and some of the areas they'll be keen to learn more about.
Yeah.
All right, good.
The system really is turnkey to sign up. You can totally do it without talking to us, but Nexpart also has a fabulous support team. We can talk to you. We can help you. There's levels of tech savvy, right? And there's levels of authority. Like, well, I went to sign up, but now I need who's got the username for WorldPack. It's like those types of things might take a little bit longer, but it really is a turnkey process. But we're here to help.
Yeah, our onboarding team, I was just going to add, Adam, they are on the phones, during Monday through Friday and even Saturday business hours. So any issues, don't hesitate to give us a call, on our onboarding number, which is on the website, to help with a problem, big or small.
All right. Great information. Thank you, Matt and Adam, for providing color. Great stuff. And Sarah, exciting to learn about Nexpart. And Adam and Matt, if you don't mind, we'd like to invite you back, and let's learn more about Nexpart as we get into the year. Things seem to be progressing really fast in our industry. So congratulations to both of you. Everybody, you can visit Nexpart on the web. You can see the URL down below, nexpart.com/dealers. And Matt and Adam, thank you so much for your time today.
Got it. Thanks for having us.
All right. Everybody, the team from Nexpart here with us today on the Fixed Ops Roundtable.